Hey, and welcome. I'm your host, Carrie Miller, and today we're talking with Candice Smiley. Candice is an abuse survivor, a self-proclaimed master manifester, and personal development junkie. Her journey to be and embrace all the parts of herself has led her to the place to start her wildly successful podcast, Create the Ripple, Trust the Niggle and Tell the Truth. She is also a public speaker, and today, Candice is going to talk to us exactly about that, trusting your inner niggle, and telling your truth. Hi, Candice. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. I'm so excited to hear about your story. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What brought you to where you are today?
It's been a kind of a long journey. For anybody who's had a chance to sort of take a look at the longer bio, dealing with some of these challenges have been an ongoing thing for me to really make some time for healing. So I'm really excited to be able to share some of that with your listeners today. I like to start off the fact I'm first and foremost, I'm a mom, and actually just welcomed second baby about 3.5 weeks ago. So right in the middle of motherhood all over again.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm absolutely loving it. Really big difference from where I started with my other daughter. She's 6.5 now, and just looking at the differences between the two. So 20 years ago, I had my first significant experience. I was sexually assaulted at 17 by a boyfriend. So somebody I trusted or should have been able to trust. And then fast forward basically to where we are today. There were relationships that weren't awesome. I tended to attract people that seemed to know that I was walking wounded. It's kind of like how I like to say it. All that to be said, though, I still built businesses. I still traveled. I still saw success. I ended up getting married in there, had a daughter. So it wasn't, the journey hasn't been without some amazing high points, but there were certainly some challenges along the way. But I think that's a story that just about anybody might have, right? Regardless of what happened. So, fast forward 20 years later, I'm in a great relationship. I've got my finances sorted out. I got my life sorted out. But a lot of it happened because last year I took some time to do some significant healing, just sort of finally hit the pause button on my life and said, I'm going to spend some time really working through that so I could function at my very best. And so that's kind of what leads me here today. Is just, I feel like after I did the work and I emerged, all of a sudden I wanted to talk about it. I didn't feel like I was hiding or, running from something, wasn't living in the guilt and the shame. And I was ready to start talking about it and connecting with other people, and realize that as I started to do so, there's a lot of us out there who go, hey, that's me, or this happened to me. And so, yeah, that's what brings me here today. It's just a desire to connect.
I love it. Sharing about our stories and doing it without the shame and the stigma attached to it is so important. Bringing more awareness to everything. I think that's wonderful. So thank you for sharing your story.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. So tell us what trusting the niggle is. What do you mean by that?
Oh, well, I heard the word Niggle a number of years ago. I'm a bit of a personal development junkie. I often joke that if Tony Robbins had a younger brother, right, I'd be all over that. And heard this word Niggle, and it's basically that annoying feeling that you get, in the pit of your stomach, sort of inside. It's a very internal thing that says something is off for me. And I didn't realize until last year when I did all the healing work about how far out of integrity with myself I had been living for so very long. Now, I would have always called myself a very honest person, right? I grew up with amazing parents and grandparents who instilled, being honest, but I don't know that I was being honest with myself. And I know one of the reasons why the sexual assault happened and why a number of the other relationships happened afterwards that were so detrimental to me was I wasn't honest with myself that I was uncomfortable with these people. I didn't want to make these people uncomfortable by saying, hey, this isn't cool. Can we stop? Can we do something different? I didn't want to make them uncomfortable. And so I ignored the niggle most of my life. And I usually say that, the niggle never comes when it's appropriate or when you wish it would. It is always going to be an inconvenient truth for you. But listening to it, if I had, and now that I'm living where when something feels off, I pay attention immediately, has brought a real freedom into my life because I'm now living in integrity with myself. I posted a quote the other day that, basically said, if you have the option of disappointing yourself or disappointing somebody else, you must every time disappoint the other person, which is not something I was raised, right? I was raised by amazing people. I want to put that out there. But we had an overwhelming belief that it was nice to be important and it's more important to be nice. And that nice, like the word nice actually means stupid. That's the etymology of it. If you chase that word back. And so
Really?
yeah, really. I know. I had that reaction too. What? Because I was a very nice girl. I was a very nice person. And because of that, I was living so far out of my own comfort zone, so far out of integrity with my own self, that created pretty much every one of the other problems in my life. And when I finally started to be honest with myself, which is, the other half, right? Trust the Niggle, tell the truth. It's not necessarily about telling the truth to the rest of the world or even to the persons or peoples or whatever's going on, although you probably will. It is so much more, at least for me, so much more about telling the truth to yourself. Because once you do, you just make different decisions, you make different choices, right? Life functions in a totally different space. And so, what is the niggle? The niggle is that really annoying sensation that something is off or wrong, and it's going to demand you make a change, you speak up for yourself, or something like that. That's what the niggle is.
So why, in your opinion, why does it seem so hard to trust ourselves and trust that niggle?
Well, I don't think we're necessarily, especially as women, okay? Like I've hung out with some really amazing men in my life, and they don't seem to have a problem in the same way, to the same degree, as standing up for themselves. And I know for myself, it was being raised as a nice girl. I was raised to be quiet and soft and kind and gentle, and these are not bad things. But I was also not raised to be passionate or powerful or independent, although it was kind of there, but it wasn't really enforced the same way the nice was, right? Right down to, we know this, right? The toys that girls are given, and there's nothing wrong with that. My daughter loves pink. She also told me the day, I don't want to be a pretty girl. And I said, well, you can be whatever you want. You can be a pretty girl. You can be whatever you in the same minute, in the same hour, you do not need to define yourself by any one particular thing at any particular moment in time. And she has seen me get mad. She has seen me lose my cool, because I think it's really important for her to know that mama is not a nice girl. I'm not. I teach her about being appropriate. I teach her about, pulling back, counting to 10 and figuring out how you can communicate that your boundaries have been crossed or that you're not happy with something, right? So it's a powerfully challenging, and there's no guidebook on that. But I think, at least I really do believe, we were sort of raised by a lot of nice women who were raised by nice women. And so we're sort of having to rewrite the mold that there's nothing wrong with being kind, but you can also have boundaries while you're kind. So if you're not taught the script, and the only script we're taught is, we're good to be sexy, it's good to be looked at, it's good to be an object, but you are not allowed to have an opinion about that. You are not allowed to set the boundaries on those sorts of things. And so I think conversations like the one we're having are really important so that we can begin to tweak women's brains. So there's nothing wrong with you. It's just, you got to learn a new thought pattern and maybe learn about setting boundaries. Like, when do we learn about setting boundaries? Ever? There's no class on that, right?
No. We're supposed to automatically know what they are
It's
and
kind
how
of
to
like,
keep them.
right? I read a great book one time that said, we blame ourselves for having relationships that don't work. But when do we ever take a class or a course on how to have really powerful relationships with great boundaries? Like, that's not taught in a school. It's not taught anywhere. So how do we expect to grow up and enter into relationships or have boundaries or any of these things, because we're not talking about them? So I like to talk about them. Yeah.
That's awesome. Somebody needs to.
That's what I think. I think engaging in the conversation, we bring more voices to the conversation. And that is, I think, just as powerful. Because I didn't know what the word nice meant. And then someone shared it with me and I was like, wait a minute, that's most of my problem. So yeah.
Time and place, and sometimes there's no place for it.
Yes, that too.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So telling your truth and telling it to the rest of the world, even when your voice shakes,
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean for you?
Well, it's really hard. I experience it as hard and trying to choose really powerful words. I think we create our world with our word. And I still experience it as challenging to speak up for myself. I still don't want to make people uncomfortable. That is overwhelming for me. And I tend to attract really amazing men and women. Some teach me great lessons, but really amazing men and women who can speak their truth. And when they do, I almost feel like saying, can you do that again so I can learn how you did that? Like, how did you shift from I'm uncomfortable to this is what I need to say? And then you just said it. You didn't even care how it made me feel. You just said it. So I'm learning that sometimes my voice will shake. And for me, because I'm living in integrity, because I'm still really aligned to being a kind individual and not wanting to cause hurt or pain as I stand up for myself or mitigate it as much as possible, is to say something like, okay, so something just happened. You said something and I'm now uncomfortable. I don't know why it's made me uncomfortable. I don't know what needs to change about it. I need a minute to process this. And usually what happens is the other person is shocked, like their face registers shock. And then, I'll say, okay, my voice, like I can hear my voice shaking because I'm standing in my own truth. Usually by then the anxiety starts to go away, because for me, when I don't speak my truth and I now shift into I'm making someone comfortable and I'm uncomfortable, it makes me anxious. And so I didn't struggle with anxiety my whole life the way I thought I did. I struggled with being honest with myself that I was uncomfortable. So, when I feel that, I say, okay, so now there's some anxiety and I just need to process that. And so for me, the only way to begin to tell the truth a lot of times is to be able to say it, or I'll pause and think, can I get back to you on that? And so depending on the person, but I've had to teach myself phrases I can use to give myself the space, time, and energy that I need to be able to get back to it and figure out what the niggle is, which is really interesting. And sometimes, and I notice this a lot with, like, say, my partner or people who are close to me, they'll say something, I'll get triggered, and I can say something like, I'm really triggered by that. Or they'll see my face because I'm like, hang on, I don't know why I'm triggered. And sometimes it's not even that moment. It makes me realize that yesterday, right, something happened and I didn't speak my mind, and it's been bugging me ever since. And now this kind of bothered me. And I think that's a very woman thing, because my partner's usually like, that happened yesterday. I'm like, I know, but it took me this long to figure out that moment was out of integrity for me. And so, speaking your truth, again, I kind of want to have the conversation for other women who maybe have never set boundaries, or, like me, have been gaslit and, manipulated. And so you do question your sanity. You do question your right to say, I'm uncomfortable, because you've always been made to feel wrong for having an opinion or being uncomfortable, that it's okay. And that if it took you, or in my case, it took me like 19 years to finally start telling the story, that it might take me a few years to learn how to right, behave in a way that is supportive of who I now recognize myself to be, right, which is somebody who lives in integrity first here and then shares it with the rest of the world. So yeah.
I love it. What for you were some of the triggers that you right now recognize that send you into the not into the anxious and not living in integrity?
I think at my core, so I'm highly creative, which means I'm a little scatterbrained some of the time, just because I'm always thinking of great ideas, or ideas. They're not always great, but they're fun to think about. And so, if I was to miss an appointment, or misspeak or you forget to do something, which isn't uncommon, it was always a much bigger deal to some of these people, as a controlling space. And so a lot of the times I would feel like, hey, I'm just showing up as myself right now, and I didn't mean to offend you. And if you assumed the offense, that's your fault. And that's how I was wanted to respond. But I would always respond with, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. And I mean, I'm Canadian, so that's one of our favorite, it's one of our favorite sayings anyway. But learning that it's okay for me to take up space, and this was something I started thinking about, like any healing. It happened certainly in stages, and ideas were planted, and then I considered them. And for a while there, I was enjoying, live music, and I would go to, a festival, and I would be enjoying the music. And I would find that I would always dance sort of in this little space, right? One, because I had been raised to think that it would be my fault, if a guy had, did something because I was dancing. Does that make sense? It was always my fault, someone else's reaction. So I've been trying to break out of that I'm allowed to be and behave how I want to, and expect other people to respect my boundaries regardless. But I also started to think about how little space I was willing to take up. I might be in this huge field, and I would be like right here. And I was like, why can't I like take up some space? Why does that feel weird? Nobody's looking, right? Everybody's doing their own thing. And who cares if they are? Why can't I extend? Like, why do I feel like that would be too much? And so I've been really thinking about that. And I think that's had an effect on why it took me so long to start talking, why even now I enjoy podcasting, I enjoy talking, but it's much easier for me to engage in this kind of a conversation than for me to even show up online and say, this is me, take it or leave it, right? That is still challenging for me to do. And so I think, now I'm sort of aware of these things when I'm being made to be made small, and that'll trigger me. So right down to if I make a mistake or cause an offense, or I mean, that's life, right? I will instantly shrink, and it's always my fault. And it's such a learned behavior. I mean, I feel myself do it now, and part of me goes, oh, okay, hang on. Just need a minute. I got to talk to my inner child. We have to work this through. I'll be right back. Right. And then I can respond and go, okay, I feel like being small. And sometimes that's literally, right, nobody advocates for you like you have to advocate for you. And so, that certainly triggers me. I'm certainly triggered now when somebody tries to shut me up or bully me. I've realized that a lot of these narcissistic relationships, or relationships where there was definitely a shift of power and it wasn't in my favor, that I allowed myself to be bullied. And so now when I feel bullied even a little bit, then the response is, don't go there. But then again, learning how to communicate, this is out of sync for me. How do we, and I guess it's because I still want to honor the other person, probably because I'm so conscious of how my voice was not heard, that I don't even want to silence the other voice, even if I feel it's overpowering, right? It's a very interesting space to be in. So, yeah.
It's that push pull. I want to be this way, but I also don't want to be that way.
Yes.
In finding that equilibrium in the middle.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So totally get it.
Yeah.
So that plot twist is your greatest gift, essentialism, to reduce anxiety, stress, and live your best life boundaries. Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, I think I saw it on an Instagram post years ago, right? When things don't go the way you plan, you just yell plot twist. And that made me burst out laughing, because I was like, well, I have a few of those. Plot twist. Yeah. And I've learned now that when the plot twists and I'm like, did not see that coming, there's usually a silver lining. And Rumi has a quote that says, we got to live as if life is rigged in your favor, because it is. And that is something that I can totally see. If I look back over, say, the last 20 years, since you saw 21 now, it has been rigged totally in my favor. Even the stuff that went totally sideways, the detours, that's going to be the name of one of my books, Detours. I learned something. I met some people. I have babies because of it. And so I really can't even, I can't be upset about it. And so it's one of the things I talk about that, when I find myself in a plot twist, and if I'm working with someone and they feel like, well, this isn't what I planned, I go, yeah, welcome to the club. But there has to be a silver lining. And for me, it has always been, if I can't find what's good about this, then it is a waste of my time and I'm just pissed off. Right? It has to mean something for me. And we're humans, we're meaning making machines, and I want it to mean something, and I want it to mean something that I define it. And maybe that's my way of bringing it back into control, is if I go looking for what's good. And I think we see what we go looking for. I really do. Um,
Absolutely.
I have always moved through things and I've been well supported to do so. And I look at some other people in and around me and they've never moved to the same space that I have. And I think, well, I've always looked up. I'm like, well, it's poopy down here, but there's got to be a better space, right? It cannot be this way forever. It just can't. It can't be. So I want to move as fast as I possibly can to the part where this gets good. And that has sort of held me through some of the stuff that has happened, some of the plot twists is, if you're going through hell, just go straight through. And I've often thought about that I'm like, well, this sucks, but let's just go as fast as we possibly can. And maybe that's part of the reason why I've moved and transitioned and have moved forward throughout the healing, is because I couldn't just sit while I healed. I had to be in motion, creating things, trying things out. I know that there's a negative psychology to hope, right? Hope without action or plans can be very detrimental. And I know this, having been, had false hope in some things that fell through. And that's really challenging to get over for sure. But for me, I need to live for hope. I need to know that there is more and better and possibilities coming. So that's something I often talk about. And I think it's good to remember and yell out things like plot twist, because then you laugh and it's so much easier to handle things when you're smiling about it. Even if you're like, wow, that was not what I planned at all. So what's the new plan? Essentialism came about as a growth out of a minimalist lifestyle that I had adopted. And I adopted that out of a necessity when I was leaving my marriage. I had an overwhelming sense that I would just decide to leave. And that's sort of how I operate. Typically, I stay in relationships longer than I need to, mostly because I want to make really good sure that this is done. And that's that whole, I don't I don't want to make somebody else uncomfortable. And I need to be sure, because I think it's been hard for me to say to these people, I'm leaving, and actually follow through. And so until I could be absolutely certain that I wouldn't go back on my word with myself, I wasn't going to try to leave. So a lot of times I started leaving while in the relationship. And so that would be, selling things I didn't need. Most specifically, when I left my marriage, I started, doing things like going through my closet and getting rid of everything, mostly because I knew I wanted it all to fit in a car so I could travel. I knew I would need some time to find myself after that kind of a big decision. I was now choosing to be a single mom, and that was a plot twist I didn't plan. So, and find myself again, right? I don't know about your listeners, but I certainly find that sometimes I have to reintroduce myself to myself before I introduce her to the rest of the world, the newest version, right, of whatever I'm going through. So I, sold off stuff, I gave away stuff, and I found myself feeling freer and freer as I did that. And that was interesting. I didn't really expect it. I had one particular pair of jeans, as silly as that is. And this was an expensive pair of jeans that a previous partner had bought me. And I would never spend that much money on a pair of jeans. And so I kept them because they were expensive, just because they were expensive. And I knew I looked great in them. So I enjoyed wearing them. But every time I wear them, I thought about this person. This was not a person I wanted to think about in any way, shape, or form at all. And the girl I was, who I bought them, who would have accepted them, wouldn't have accepted them because she was uncomfortable with that amount of money. Does that make sense? Like, it was a whole bunch of things that would go through my body, through my emotional system every single time I put them on. And I finally stood there and went, these jeans have no space in my future. They were part of my past. They were great. Somebody's going to find them at Goodwill and think score, and it is a score. But for me, they have to go. They have to go. And I have thought about those pair of jeans so many times because I'm so damn glad I got rid of them. Like, I
Yeah.
can't even tell you, like, such a good call. And then once I got rid of them, I was like, you know what? I don't like this shirt. I don't like this. I don't like that. And I had been living in scarcity that, like, what if I don't have more? What if it gets worse? You know what? I was already living and it was bad, right? That it was so much easier to start with so little. And then I discovered I don't actually need anymore. Like, I have not stepped into like a department store or a big store. I walk into those things now and I get anxiety from going shopping because I'm like, there are so many choices. I don't need any of them, but they're all so pretty and I want to buy them, but I don't need to buy them. I don't need to buy any of these things. I came in here for this and I can't find that, but I can find a billion things I don't need. Versus if I do a thrift shop and I think I'm only going in for that aisle and I'm going to get this and then I'm piecing out. So as I let go, I felt freer and freer. And so then I did that in the closet. And then I did that with my books. And then I did that with like my collectibles. I did that in every single area of my life. And so essentialism is sort of one step next to minimalism, which says you won't have a lot of stuff. You won't have a lot of things that you don't need. And that includes people, places, opportunities, whatever that is. And that was the big shift for me last year as I shifted from, I no longer want to be in this networking group. I no longer want to be friends with this person. There's no reason to announce it. Just unfriend, unfollow, carry on. And again, it goes back to that whole trust in the niggle, so I could tell the truth. And I wanted to get to a point where the only voices I was hearing was my own. And then the people that I would actually take advice from, listen to, follow through, or things that lit me up and made me feel good. And I know for some people, living in a space where they're only following their bliss feels like a fantasy. And I think, I don't mind my fantasy. It's okay over here. If I need access to information, people, places, or things, it's called Google and I can find it. But otherwise, this is the bubble I'm going to choose to live in. This is how I'm going to operate in a space where I am feeling free and clear so I can make decisions accordingly.
So a couple things. For me, your jeans was my car.
I love it.
I used to drive an Impala, and until I got rid of my Impala, I felt like there was always a connection with the ex.
Right?
And when the Impala was gone, it was like I heard it, ah, it was
That's awesome.
it was just like that last high. It was so amazing. Yep. And yeah. And getting rid of all of those things that you think you need that are just taking up space, that are creating the clutter, that creates the clutter in your mind so that you can't think clearly. You don't, you can't focus. So an unfocused mind is an unfocused life. And I am like you. I choose to create my world. I create my bubble. And I choose what I let in my bubble.
Right?
And, where focus goes, energy flows. You create more of the same. And I tell my clients all the time, what are you focusing on? What are you letting in that you don't really want in? So that you can clear out to have the space for the calm, the peace, the happiness that you so desire. And sometimes it's a hard lesson to get to that point, unfortunately.
Yep. But you know what? We're doing hard anyway.
Right?
That a lot of time people are like, that's hard. I'm like, dude, you're living in an unhappy marriage. That's way harder, like way harder. And does freedom come at a price? Yeah, it does. No jeans, no Impala. But you know what? The freedom on the other side, I take it every day, like every single day. Way better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love the jean analogy. That was so great.
I think about it every time I tell the story. I'm like, they were nice jeans, man.
Right?
Like someday I'll be on stage and you'll be like, those are nice jeans. I'll be like, I bought them myself. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you said you had some big grief in your life and it changed you. How and why would you suggest that others consider living more fully in their truth, even if it hurts in the moment?
So last year I was started 2020, the year that almost was, right? Well, almost wasn't, right? I was in a relationship with somebody, and I thought it was going to be a very long-term one. I thought I had come into it very healthy. I know now it was definitely about transition, as some things are, right? And I knew it needed to be over. So did he. But it was very hard for both of us to acknowledge that, to speak it, and then to separate our lives. And it was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. For a lot of reasons. I'd really hedged my bets on this one. And it's different when you hurt yourself, right? But it's for the bigger and greater good. It's a whole different kind of grief. So it kind of just opened me. And I was actually doing a podcast at the time, a different version of the podcast I do now. And I realized that the grief was changing me. And I didn't necessarily know if that was a bad thing anymore. And I thought about all of the moments throughout my life where there had been a grief or a loss. The ending of my marriage, still very sad. It's very sad when relationships fall apart. And some of those things. And I was like, it's okay if I'm changed by this. It's okay if I sit in this. And I think I'd been so afraid to sit and actually cry or feel the loss of some of those things, I messed up, and sit in it and just really sit in it. And I'm the kind of person, right? If I'm working out, I don't love cardio. Cardio feels awful, right? But if I can hide the cardio and something that feels fun, we can do that all day long. So I'm the person that moves away from pain. Generally, I want to look for the easy ways to do things. And I was like, I don't think I can move away from this. I think, in fact, by moving away from this, I'm not actually dealing with it. And because I'm not actually dealing with it, it's not actually healing. And I think I'm kind of done with some of these patterns, with some of these repeats, these plot twists, which I know the only person actually connected to all the plot twists is me. So at some point, I'm going to have to acknowledge that and own all of this. And so I sat with that. And for the first time in my life, I invited all of the grief to come and sit with me. And that's the only way I can describe it. I just basically said, you know what? Bring it. I'm not going to worry if it overtakes me. I'm just going to be in it. And interestingly enough, did it suck? Yeah, but it almost felt good to feel it. It's kind of like, and like, maybe this is a little bit off for some of your listeners, but when you're giving birth, when the contractions are like they're moving things forward, you're glad. You're like, this is good, right? So the pain sucks, but it's doing something. It's worse when it's like this is not doing anything, right? So I think that was a big deal. And ever since then, I've been like, I wonder what would have happened in my life if I'd had the courage to sit with my grief sooner, right? I was so worried about not having it all together for so long, which is probably something we all experience in our 20s, right? Want to prove ourselves to ourselves mostly. I wanted to prove that I was okay. And especially after the assault, right? I'm good. I'm ready to move on. Yes, I can get another boyfriend. I'm fine, right? No big deal. It happens to everybody. And then I was like, you know what? I'm not okay. And I haven't been okay for 20 years. I'm actually not okay. I'm not okay. I'm not okay that this happened. I'm not okay that happened. And that's that truth part. So I finally listened to the Niggle and I was like, you know what? I'm actually pissed. I'm pissed off that this happened. I'm mad at myself for never saying this. In fact, I'm more mad at myself for not speaking up than I am with the guy for doing it. And that's a problem. And why haven't I acknowledged that? And so it was like, once I opened up that door, there was so much that myself wanted to have a conversation with for myself. So for me, that came out in a journal. And I'm actually launching a journal specific to trust the Niggle and tell the truth. Just specifically, I needed to tell the truth about it. And so I wrote some really raw things down and told myself the truth for the very first time on some issues. And so I guess I would love to invite more people, well, women for sure, to sit down, and not everybody deserves all the truth, but you certainly do. So tell yourself the truth. If you're mad about it, tell yourself that. If you're sad about it, tell yourself about it. And I just kind of felt like a huge weight of relief was lifted because I was finally honest with me. And so, yeah, I think more people, I just wish they would find the same courage, because the relief and the freedom on the other side, totally worth it.
Love it. So how did you get to a place of being open to trust to find new love?
Well, I think part of it happened because I didn't, I lived my life by a set of core values, and it took me a very long time to really be honest about it, right? It was easy to, live by values. I thought it was kindness. Then I actually realized I'm just like, no, it's actually love. I really do believe in love. And I just felt like, well, just because I failed at one doesn't mean I'm going to fail at the other one. I had to have learned something from this one, right? So let's try it again. For a while I thought, well, this or better, right? So I employed a lot of those, very cliche type things that, they have a place for sure. I guess because as I started to be honest with myself, I realized I deserved love. And more than that, I wanted to give it. I enjoy being in a relationship very much. I joke all the time with my current partner that I'm like, I don't know how to have this conversation with you because I haven't been in a healthy relationship like this before. So this is weird. Thankfully, he usually just laughs with me. And, we both it gives us a freedom to show up very honestly. But that even occurs in my friendships because, how I was functioning in one relationship is how I was functioning all over. And so I'll call up a friend and go, I'm uncomfortable by some of the stuff we said yesterday, but and just, I guess, the space to be honest. So I knew I wanted to be in love. I knew I wanted to give love. I knew I wanted to have more children, even though I'd been living for a number of years saying, I'm good with just one because I had a career. So how in the heck would I manage it all? I'm still not sure how I'm going to manage it all. I'm just no longer concerned about what someone else might think of what they could or couldn't do, and not defining myself by that. And I feel like the best revenge is a life well lived. And I thought, wouldn't that be the proof that I have done the work if I can shift from who I was, who attracted those people, to attracting the ideal person? And so it shifted from looking for a man who might fix or fill in the gaps and the holes that I had, but more about becoming the kind of woman who would attract a person into my life who would love me the way I was loving myself. Because Lord knows there was no way I could accept any kind of love until I could first give it to myself. And there was a lot of relationships that I was in that I don't actually know if I liked the person. And heaven forbid some of them ever listen to this, but I'm like, I don't know if I actually like them. I sure love them. We had good times, but did I actually like them? Would I have chosen them if I was honestly speaking my truth? Would I have chosen to be with them? Because I think I knew for the most part, I'm like, I was just biding my time or was enjoying it and waiting for something better to come along. Not that that was my intention. That makes me sound awful. So I'm being very honest here. But I think it was because I didn't have the courage to speak up and go, this isn't exactly what I wished it to be or want it to be. And I don't want to change you and you don't want to change me. So I'm going to release you so you can carry on with your journey and I can carry on with mine. I didn't have the courage to do that. I didn't have the courage to be alone. I didn't have the courage to face the grief. I didn't have whatever it was. And so I just sort of lived in the space where I was neither here nor there. So then fast forward and I do the work and I'm now at peace with myself. I'm only telling myself the truth. And now all of a sudden I can't even be in friendships that aren't totally authentic and honest and I'm not speaking my mind. Um, and so that just automatically attracted me to somebody who actually, when we started hanging out, I said, I'm just reintroducing myself to myself. I am not interested in getting into a relationship. I said some of those silly things like, I'm going to be alone for a year. That was not apparently my plan, not the bigger plan anyway. Because I just said like, this could be great. I'm sure you're great, but I want to be focused on me. And I think because of that, he responded with the same energy. It was really honest. And so he came back and said, great, let's go be friends. What do you want to try? And I said, well, I really want to go backcountry camping because that sounds really cool. And he's like, I love that too. That's how we fell in love. It was one of those things where love really came softly. And as I sensed it coming on for the first time, I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm falling in love. I was like, oh, look at that. That's some love over there. That's cool. Do I want it? Do I really want to are we aligned? Are we going in the same direction? And so all of a sudden I was dealing with love the same way I was dealing with any of the other things, which I feel like gave it some space to breathe. I wasn't functioning from a scarcity mindset. I knew I'd be okay whether it came or went. Like, is this something supposed to teach me a lesson or is this going to be a long time thing? I didn't push it the way I had with so many other relationships because at the underlying core, I hadn't dealt with the stuff I needed to. And so when someone's like, well, how did you move from there? Because it was like within less than a year, I'd moved through grief, done an incredible amount of healing, fell in love again, really unexpectedly. It shocked pretty much everybody in my life. They're like, when did that happen? I was like, I don't actually know. I know I'm in love with me and it feels good. And for the first time in my life, there's no niggle. In fact, I like myself when I'm with him and I actually like him. I actually like him. And, he laughs, my friends laugh, but it feels good because I'm like, no, this relationship is in integrity with who I am and where I'm going and what I want for my life. And then fast forward, and now we have a brand new baby. And I didn't plan that. I just planned to live to trust the niggle and tell the truth. And that's where it ended up. Now, that being said, there are times when I'm triggered and there are times when I have to say, this is a new space for me. I don't know how I should respond. How would somebody respond? And it actually brings a lot of levity into the relationship because we're trying so hard to break old patterns that we're just doing things in a way that is just honest every single day, which is a really great place to be.
Absolutely. So before we go, what would you say would be one action, or what would you suggest would be one action that you think people should take to start moving forward?
Grab a journal and a pen. Somewhere you can be really honest with yourself. For me, I think much better when I don't have to speak it. I think because for so many years, that was very much attacked, right? When I would speak my mind or speak my truth or try to do that, that was uncomfortable, but I could write it down on a secret note, right? I could do that. But I know for some people, they may not be in a safe space. And so, they may need to, write it and then burn it or, find some way to do that. But for me, it was just about being that honest somewhere and start there. Because everybody's journey, whether it's leaving a narcissistic relationship or just acknowledging that the niggle's already going off, right? You already know you're not where you need to be or could be. And you already know it's going to be a long road. And I think the fact that I sort of always acknowledge that amongst myself, I knew it would be a few years before I would feel good. I still know, right? Every level I go, as I grow into myself, I run into beliefs and patterns that still exist. And then you just heal them, right? You just do the work. But you got to start by telling yourself the truth and don't worry about rushing, right? Even if you know you need to leave your marriage or your relationship, or you need to have some really big conversations because you don't want to leave and you want to be honest with whoever or whatever it is, those take time. So give yourself the gift of time to figure that out, right? Maybe you'd be like me. And when I realized I needed to leave my marriage, the first thing I did was go, I'm going to leave. I don't know when, I don't know how. I had a six-day-old baby. So everything felt very overwhelming at that point, but I knew it. I was like, I am so raw right now. I know I'm telling myself the truth. I will figure out how later. That was enough. And then I looked in the mirror, and I have a great picture. I really should start sharing it. And I'm looking in the mirror, and there's quite a bit of baby weight. And my face is like, but first, we're going to fix this. And for me, it was like, how am I going to take care of anybody else or her if I don't take care of me first? And so I figured, you know what? I don't need to leave right now. First, I'm going to lose 50 pounds. And I did. That was the first thing. And then that was easier. And then came the letting go and all that other stuff. And so it took me about 2.5 years before I did finally leave. But I was ready to. I knew, I was like, I had a plan. I had things figured out. And so I tell that to a lot of women that I end up chatting with. And I'm like, take your time. There's no rush. Once you know the decision's made, it will grow in your heart, and you'll begin to meet people, places, and things that are going to support you to live your life in that way. But they're going to start small because you've been living and thinking in one particular way, and now you're choosing to live and think in a different way. And so you may not meet, the right person or whatever you need to move on, but just stay open, and way will lead on to way. And start by telling yourself the truth. Just be honest with yourself in the mirror. Work there first, and the rest will become clear as you are ready for it and as you need it, right? The old cliche, right? When the student is ready, the teacher appears. That's the same thing here, man. Like, I could not have left on that day, not in any way that would have been powerful for my daughter, for me, for my, my former partner, none of that. And I'm kind of glad I took my time, because when I did leave, I was able to leave. I took 6 months. I went traveling and did some house sitting, saw some great stuff, reintroduced myself to myself, had more time to think, more time to journal, right? Began to dream a little bit, and then sat down with my partner and said, this isn't working. It's not working. But the person who sat down was very different from the person I had been 2.5 years ago. And the response and the conversation came from a very, very different space. Has it been easy? No, right? We all know that. But I knew what I needed to say, and it took me that long to figure it out.
This has been so amazing, Candice. Thank you for sharing with us. I adore you for it. Please keep telling your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you.